The Ketheri Collective had spent millennia perfecting the art of civilization. Their crystalline ships, powered by quantum-folded space, had mapped 17 galactic arms and documented countless species. They had seen civilizations rise and fall, guided some to enlightenment, and gently suppressed others deemed too volatile for the cosmic community. In all their time among the stars, they had never encountered a species quite like humanity. Admiral Lizara Ven stood on the bridge of the eternal light, her iridescent scales shifting colors as she reviewed the preliminary reports from Earth. The planet was unremarkable at first glance, a water world circling an average star, populated by bipedal organisms who had barely mastered basic spaceflight. What caught her attention was the speed of their development. "Remarkable," she murmured, her inner eyelids flickering as she processed the data. From first powered flight to orbital satellites in less than 70 solar cycles. Protocol suggests observation for at least another century. But her second-in-command, Tactical Overseer Nix, moved closer to the holographic display. "There's something else, Admiral. They're information networks. They're chaotic, decentralized, but the processing power and information flow rival our own quantum networks." The Ketheri had always prided themselves on their methodical, measured approach to technological advancement. Each innovation was carefully tested, its societal impact studied over decades before implementation. Humans, by contrast, seemed to embrace chaos as a catalyst for progress. "They're wasteful," Lizara declared, watching footage of human vehicles burning fossil fuels, their cities blazing with artificial light. "Their potential is undeniable, but they lack the wisdom to properly harness it. The Council will never approve full contact status." That was when the Ketheri made their first critical mistake. Rather than continue observation, Lizara recommended immediate intervention, what the collective euphemistically called guided development. The plan was simple: demonstrate overwhelming technological superiority, establish a protectorate status, and gradually shepherd humanity toward a more enlightened path. They chose Beijing for their first demonstration. At precisely 3:47 p.m. local time, every electronic device in the city simultaneously displayed the same message in all major languages: "We come to guide you." Seconds later, a Ketheri ship materialized above the city center, its crystalline structure refracting sunlight in dazzling patterns. The humans' response was not what they expected. Instead of awe or submission, the immediate reaction was resistance. Military jets scrambled, despite being hopelessly outmatched. Global communications erupted with activity, not in panic, but in coordinated purpose. Before the Ketheri could initiate their second demonstration, humans worldwide were already analyzing the ship's appearance, theorizing about its technological principles, and developing potential countermeasures. "Impossible," Lizara whispered, watching as human scientists began postulating surprisingly accurate theories about Ketheri technology within hours of first contact. Their scientific databases suggest they're at least a century away from understanding quantum field manipulation. What the Ketheri failed to grasp was that human scientific databases didn't just contain verified theories. They were filled with speculation, science fiction, and countless what-if scenarios. Humanity had been imagining and theorizing about advanced technology long before they could build it. When confronted with actual advanced technology, they already had frameworks in place to understand and adapt it. The second demonstration was meant to be a display of power, the complete but temporary neutralization of all military capabilities in a small city. The Ketheri deployed their quantum field suppressors over a military base in Nevada, expecting to quietly disable all electronic and mechanical devices. Instead, they encountered the first sign of humanity's terrible potential. The humans had already begun modifying their equipment based on observations from Beijing. Crude but effective countermeasures were in place, developed in less than 24 hours. Some of their weapons remained operational, and while they couldn't penetrate Ketheri shields, the sheer variety and creativity of their attacks was unsettling. "They're not following any known development patterns," Nix reported, his scales shifting to a troubled azure. They're taking theoretical concepts and implementing them without proper testing. It's reckless, dangerous, and effective. Lizara finished, watching as humans rapidly adapted their strategies. The Council must be informed. This species, they don't just learn, they improvise. They don't just adapt, they evolve. And most concerning of all, she paused, watching as yet another human countermeasure was deployed. They seemed to thrive on the challenge itself. The Ketheri had meant to guide humanity toward a controlled, measured advancement. Instead, they had inadvertently created something unprecedented. A species fully awakened to its potential, driven by the very chaos the collective had sought to suppress, and utterly determined to chart its own path among the stars. As the first day of contact drew to a close, Lizara made an entry in her personal log. "We came to guide humanity toward enlightenment, but I fear we may have instead awakened something beyond our understanding. They do not view our superior technology with appropriate humility, but rather as a challenge to be overcome. The Council's response will be crucial. This species cannot be approached with our standard protocols. They must either be completely subdued or acknowledged as equals. There may be no middle ground." She could not have known then just how prophetic those words would prove to be, or how severely the Ketheri would come to regret choosing the path of subjugation over cooperation. The Ketheri Council's decision came swiftly. Humanity would be subdued through overwhelming force. They had done it countless times before with other problematic species, and their success rate was perfect. But humans would prove to be anything but typical. Within 72 hours of the Council's decision, the Ketheri launched what they called a pacification initiative. 5,000 ships materialized in Earth's orbit, their crystalline structures forming a lattice of deadly beauty against the planet's atmosphere. Admiral Lizara Ven, despite her reservations, executed the plan with characteristic precision. The first wave targeted military installations worldwide, using quantum-shifted energy beams that should have rendered all electronic equipment useless. Should have. What the Ketheri discovered instead was that humans had already begun adapting their technology based on the initial encounters. Military bases had been partially shielded using principles reversed engineered from observations of Ketheri ships. The effectiveness was crude, perhaps 30% at best, but the very fact that humans had managed any defense at all was unprecedented. "Remarkable adaptation rate," muttered Dr. Senna Vex, the collective's chief xenobiologist, studying the data from her laboratory ship. "They're not just copying our technology, they're innovating on it. Look at these energy signatures. They're using principles we never even considered." The humans' response to the attack demonstrated their unique approach to warfare. Instead of trying to match the Ketheri's technological superiority head-on, they got creative. Civilian tech companies repurposed their satellites to create a makeshift early warning system. Gaming servers were transformed into massive parallel processing networks for analyzing Ketheri attack patterns. Social media platforms became instant intelligence sharing networks. But it was their psychological warfare that truly caught the Ketheri off guard. Humans began broadcasting messages on frequencies they knew the Ketheri could intercept. Not pleas for mercy, but memes. Thousands upon thousands of cultural references, jokes, and digitally altered images that made light of the invasion. The Ketheri's translation systems struggled to make sense of it all. What does "we will rock you" mean in this context? Tactical Overseer Nix demanded, puzzling over one particularly viral message. "And why do they keep referring to us as space jellies?" The answer came in the form of a coordinated counterattack that no one could have predicted. While the Ketheri were distracted trying to understand human communication patterns, a coalition of Earth's nations had been working on something unprecedented. They called it Project Butterfly Effect. The plan was beautifully simple in its chaos. Instead of trying to destroy the Ketheri ships directly, humans focused on disrupting their perfectly ordered formation. Using a combination of electromagnetic pulses, focused sonic waves, and what they called quantum noise, a concept that made Cathari scientists shudder at its reckless brilliance. They created zones of unpredictable space-time fluctuations around the invasion fleet. "They're turning our own precision against us," Lizara realized, watching as her perfectly coordinated fleet began to suffer cascading systems failures. The Cathari ship's quantum-folded space drives required absolute precision. The humans had figured this out, and instead of trying to break through their superior shields, they simply made it impossible for the ships to maintain their perfect formation. But what truly terrified the Cathari wasn't the effectiveness of these tactics, it was the speed at which humans kept improving them. Every countermeasure the collective deployed was met with 3 new human innovations. They weren't just learning. They were treating the entire invasion as a massive real-world experiment in advanced physics. "They're using our attacks as learning opportunities," Dr. Vex reported, her scales shifting to a troubled violet. "Every time we deploy a new weapon, they don't just defend against it. They take it apart, understand it, and turn it into something new. I've never seen anything like it." The defining moment came when a group of human scientists, working out of a hastily converted video game development studio in Singapore, created what they called the uncertainty engine. Using principles they'd learned from studying damaged Cathari ships, they developed a way to introduce controlled chaos into quantum fields. The result was devastating to the Cathari's perfectly ordered technology. "They've weaponized unpredictability," Lizara reported to the Council. "Our systems are designed for perfect order, perfect precision. Humans have found a way to make that precision our weakness. They're not just fighting us, they're rewriting the rules of engagement." The Council's response was immediate: escalate the conflict. If humans could adapt to their technology, then the Cathari would simply have to overwhelm them with force. It was a decision that would prove to be their second fatal mistake, for they had failed to understand a fundamental truth about humanity. The more you try to force them to submit, the more creative they become in their resistance. As the first week of full-scale invasion drew to a close, Dr. Vex made a final entry in her research log. "We thought we were studying a primitive species learning to use advanced technology. We were wrong. We're witnessing the awakening of something entirely new, a species that doesn't just use technology, but becomes one with it, that treats the impossible as merely a temporary inconvenience. The Council believes we can still win through superior force, but I fear we've already lost. We just don't know it yet." The Cathari's escalation of force marked the beginning of what humans would later call the Renaissance of necessity. As cities around the world fell under attack, humanity's response wasn't just to fight back. It was to revolutionize their entire approach to technology and warfare. In the depths of a repurposed Bitcoin mining facility in Iceland, Dr. Sarah Chen stood before a wall of holographic displays, each showing different aspects of Cathari technology. Their weakness, she explained to a global conference of scientists connected via quantum-encrypted channels, isn't in their technology. It's in their inability to imagine it being used differently. The humans had discovered something profound about their adversaries. The Cathari's technological advancement had made them inflexible. Every system, every weapon, every tactic was optimized for perfect efficiency, but that very perfection made them predictable. In Mumbai, a team of programmers who once developed mobile games had created an AI that could predict Cathari attack patterns with 89% accuracy. They didn't achieve this through advanced quantum computing, but through pattern recognition algorithms originally designed for matchmaking in battle royale games. "They always choose the optimal solution," explained Raj Patel, the team's lead developer. "But in gaming, we learned long ago that the optimal strategy becomes predictable, and predictable means beatable." The Cathari were baffled by humanity's approach to warfare. Instead of establishing a central command structure, Earth's military forces had adopted what they called a viral defense strategy. Independent cells of resistance would develop new technologies or tactics, and if they proved effective, they would be rapidly shared and adapted globally. Admiral Lizara Ven watched with growing concern as her forces encountered increasingly sophisticated resistance. "They're not just adapting our technology," she reported to the council. "They're hybridizing it with their own in ways we never considered possible." One of the most striking examples came from an unlikely source: a collaboration between marine biologists and quantum physicists in New Zealand. They had observed that Ketheri ships' quantum field generators operated on principles similar to certain deep-sea creatures' bioluminescence. By studying this parallel, they developed what they called quantum squid drones, small, highly maneuverable devices that could navigate through the Ketheri's quantum fields like fish through water. But it wasn't just military technology that was evolving. Humanity's entire infrastructure was being transformed by the necessity of survival. When the Ketheri attempted to disable Earth's power grids, engineers responded by developing a decentralized energy network inspired by neural networks. Power plants began operating like nodes in a vast, adaptive organism, rerouting energy automatically in response to attacks. The collected scientists were particularly disturbed by humanity's casual disregard for technological orthodoxy. Dr. Senna Vex documented numerous instances of humans combining technologies in ways that, by Ketheri understanding, should have been catastrophically unstable. "They're using quantum uncertainty as a feature, not a bug," she noted with a mixture of horror and admiration. "They're intentionally introducing chaos into systems to make them more resilient. It's like watching evolution occur in real time." Perhaps the most shocking development came from what the humans called Project Babel. A team of linguists and computer scientists had been studying the Ketheri's communication protocols and made an unexpected discovery. The aliens' language was so precise and structured that it had become a vulnerable attack surface. "Their entire civilization is built on perfect order and predictability," explained Dr. James Morrison, the project's lead linguist. "Their language reflects this. It's mathematically perfect, without any ambiguity. So we decided to introduce some ambiguity." The result was a cyber warfare campaign that exploited the rigid structure of Ketheri communication systems. Humans began injecting linguistic paradoxes and deliberately ambiguous commands into the Ketheri's network, causing cascading errors in their translation matrices. It was the digital equivalent of giving a computer a logical paradox, and it proved devastatingly effective. But what truly set humanity apart wasn't just their technological innovation. It was their ability to find strength in their apparent weaknesses. When the Ketheri targeted Earth's major cities, expecting to cripple human civilization, they instead found that humanity's disparate nature made them remarkably resilient. "Every time we destroy one of their centers of technology," Tactical Overseer Nix reported, "3 more seem to spring up in unexpected places. We disabled Silicon Valley, only to find crucial developments coming from a repurposed textile factory in Bangladesh. We neutralized their quantum research facility in Geneva, and suddenly breakthrough innovations are emerging from a high school physics lab in Kenya." The Ketheri had expected to find a primitive species struggling to comprehend advanced technology. Instead, they found themselves facing an adversary that treated their most sophisticated weapons as inspiration for art projects. Humans weren't just surviving the invasion. They were using it as a catalyst for the most explosive period of innovation in their history. As the conflict entered its second month, Dr. Vex made a crucial observation in her research logs. "The fundamental difference between us and humans isn't technological, it's philosophical. We see technology as a path to perfection. They see it as a tool for exploration. We seek to eliminate chaos. They harness it. And most importantly, while we view warfare as a means to impose order, they see it as an opportunity for revolution. We may have superior technology, but they have something far more dangerous: the ability to imagine impossible things and then make them real." 3 months into the conflict, the Ketheri Collective faced an unprecedented situation. Their perfect record of successful planetary pacifications was about to be broken. Despite deploying their most advanced weaponry and strategies, they found themselves locked in a stalemate with a species that, by all reasonable measures, should have been defeated within days. The breaking point began with what humans would later call Operation Pandora. In a hidden facility beneath the Australian outback, a coalition of quantum physicists, hackers, and radical theoretical scientists had developed something that defied the Ketheri's understanding of possibility itself. "We call it quantum mimetic warfare," explained Dr. Maya Patel, her eyes gleaming with the same fierce determination that had become characteristic of humanity's resistance. "If they want to fight us with perfect order, we'll show them the power of perfect chaos." The operation started subtly. At first, the Ketheri noticed only minor anomalies in their ship's quantum field generators, random fluctuations that seemed meaningless in isolation, but formed part of a larger pattern that was slowly taking shape across their entire fleet. Admiral Lizera Venn was the first to recognize the true nature of the threat. "They're not attacking our ships," she reported to the increasingly concerned Council. "They're rewriting the fundamental rules of how our technology interacts with space-time itself." What the humans had created was beyond innovative. It was revolutionary. They had found a way to introduce controlled quantum uncertainty into the very fabric of reality around Ketheri technology. The perfect precision that made their ships so powerful became their greatest vulnerability. The collective scientists watched in horror as their most advanced systems began to behave in ways that should have been impossible. Quantum fields became unpredictable, crystalline structures developed anomalous patterns, and their perfect formation began to dissolve into what one human scientist cheerfully described as weaponized uncertainty. But Operation Pandora was just the beginning. While the Ketheri struggled to adapt to this new form of warfare, humanity launched what they called Project Babel Reversed. If their earlier linguistic attacks had been about introducing chaos into Ketheri communications, this was about something far more fundamental. "We're not just changing how their systems process language," explained Dr. Sarah Chen, now leading a global network of cognitive scientists and programmers. "We're changing how they think about thinking." The project exploited a crucial weakness in the Ketheri's perfect, logical worldview. By introducing them to human concepts like metaphor, irony, and paradox, they began to create subtle fractures in the aliens' rigid thought patterns. It was psychological warfare on a civilization-wide scale. The impact was profound. Ketheri commanders found themselves hesitating, second-guessing their perfect strategies as human unpredictability infected their decision-making processes. Their troops, exposed to human creativity and chaos, began showing signs of something the collective had never encountered before: individual initiative. "They're experiencing cultural contamination," Dr. Senna Vex reported, her scales shifting through colors that had no name in human languages. "Their exposure to human thought patterns is causing a kind of evolutionary pressure on their cognitive processes." The turning point came during what would later be known as the Battle of Luna. The Ketheri, desperate to regain their advantage, launched a massive assault on Earth's lunar bases. They expected to find vulnerable outposts. Instead, they found humanity at its most creative and terrifying. The entire moon had been transformed into what humans called a quantum resonance amplifier. Using principles reverse-engineered from Ketheri technology and combined with human innovations, they had turned Earth's satellite into a device that could manipulate the very forces the Ketheri relied upon. "Did you really think we spent the last 3 months just playing defense?" transmitted Dr. Chen as the trap was sprung. "We've been learning, adapting, evolving. But most importantly, we've been preparing." The lunar surface lit up with patterns that made Ketheri sensors scream in protest. Every crater, every ridge, every feature of the moon's geography had been precisely calculated to create a quantum interference pattern that turned the Ketheri's own technology against them. Admiral Venn watched in disbelief as her fleet's perfect formation dissolved into chaos. "This isn't possible," she whispered, her scales paling to a color of pure shock. "They've turned an entire celestial body into a weapon." The computational power required, the engineering challenges, the sheer audacity. But what truly broke the Ketheri wasn't the technical achievement. It was the message that followed. Transmitted on all frequencies, in perfect Ketheri language structure, came humanity's response to 3 months of attempted subjugation. Your mistake wasn't in underestimating our technology. It was in underestimating our capacity for growth. Every challenge you presented, every weapon you deployed, every tactic you used, they weren't obstacles to us. They were opportunities. You tried to force us to submit to your perfect order. Instead, you taught us how to turn chaos itself into an art form. The question isn't whether you'll retreat. The question is, what will you learn from this? As the Ketheri fleet fell into disarray, Dr. Vex made her final entry in the xenobiological archives. We came to teach them our way of perfection. They taught us instead that true advancement comes not from eliminating chaos, but from learning to dance with it. The species we came to subjugate has become something unprecedented in the galaxy's history. A civilization that treats impossibility as merely a temporary inconvenience and turns adversity itself into a force for evolution. In the aftermath of the Battle of Luna, the galaxy witnessed something unprecedented. The Ketheri Collective, for the first time in their 50,000 years of expansion, signed a peace treaty. The ceremony took place in a hastily constructed space station orbiting Earth's moon, its walls a deliberate blend of crystalline Ketheri architecture and human aesthetic chaos. Admiral Lizara Ven, now serving as the Collective's chief diplomatic envoy, stood before a mixed audience of humans and Ketheri. Her scales shifted through a complex pattern of colors as she addressed the gathering. "We came as conquerors," she began, "and leave as students. The galaxy will never be the same, and that, we now understand, is exactly as it should be." The changes were already rippling through both civilizations. The Ketheri, exposed to human creativity and adaptability, were experiencing a cultural revolution. Their younger generation, in particular, had begun incorporating human concepts of innovation and improvisation into their traditionally rigid society. "It's fascinating," Dr. Senna Vex observed, watching a group of young Ketheri engineers collaborating with human scientists. "They're learning to appreciate imperfection not as a flaw, but as a source of potential. And we're learning that there's more than one path to understanding the universe." Humanity, for their part, had undergone their own transformation. The integration of Ketheri quantum technology with human ingenuity had accelerated their development by centuries. But more importantly, they had proven something to themselves and the galaxy: that determination, creativity, and the ability to adapt were just as valuable as technological superiority. The Friendship or Else Initiative, as humans half-jokingly named their first interstellar diplomatic program, became a model for future relations between spacefaring species. Its core principle was simple: cooperation was always preferred, but any species that chose conflict would face an adversary that turned warfare itself into an art form. "We're calling it adaptive diplomacy," explained Dr. Sarah Chen, now heading Earth's new Institute for Xenological Relations. "The goal isn't to dominate or submit, but to create something new together." The Ketheri taught us about quantum fields and perfect crystalline structures. We taught them about jazz improvisation and the beauty of controlled chaos. The synthesis of these two approaches led to innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. The Ketheri's precise quantum engineering, combined with humanity's creative applications, gave birth to technologies that transformed both civilizations. Space travel became an art as much as a science, with ships that could actually improvise their way through quantum fields. Perhaps the most profound change was philosophical. The Ketheri Council, in an unprecedented move, revised their ancient protocols for encountering new civilizations. The measure of a species' worth, their new doctrine stated, lies not in their current level of advancement, but in their capacity for growth and adaptation. Dr. Maya Patel, speaking at the opening of the first joint Human Ketheri Research Institute, summed up the transformation. "We didn't just survive their invasion. We evolved because of it. And in doing so, we helped them evolve too." That's the real victory here, proving that conflict, when channeled correctly, can lead to cooperation and growth. The galaxy watched with fascination as human influence spread. Other species, long held in check by fear of the collective, began to explore their own potential for innovation. The rigid hierarchies that had dominated interstellar relations for millennia began to flex and adapt. They're calling it the human renaissance, Admiral Venn noted in her final report to the Council. But it's more than that. It's a fundamental shift in how civilizations view progress. The old way was about achieving perfection. The new way is about embracing possibility. As Earth prepared to launch its first fleet of hybrid ships, vessels that combined Cathari quantum engineering with human adaptability, a new message was transmitted across the galaxy. It replaced the Cathari's ancient warning about dangerous species with something different. When you encounter humans, come with an open mind and a willingness to learn. They may not have the most advanced technology, the most orderly society, or the most efficient methods. What they have is far more valuable. The ability to turn any challenge into an opportunity for growth, the creativity to imagine impossible things, and the determination to make those impossible things real. They are not just a species, they are a catalyst for evolution itself. Back on Earth, in a small classroom in Kenya, where children were learning to manipulate quantum fields through dance movements, a student asked the question that would define humanity's new role in the galaxy. What's next? The teacher, an elderly physicist who had helped develop the lunar quantum resonance weapon, smiled. Everything, she replied. Everything is next. We've learned that the only real limit is our imagination. And imagination, well, that's the one resource humans never run out of. And so began humanity's true golden age, not as conquerors or the conquered, but as innovators, teachers, and eternal students of the possible. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly the point.